Hey guys, what's going on? In this video, we're talking about the FeiyuTech G6 and if this is the gimbal that you need for your GoPro or other cameras that fit on it. All right, so I did a video a while back on the G5, and the G5 was an awesome gimbal. I really liked it. It's the one I've been using. However, recently I just picked up the G6. So it's definitely improved, and you can tell just from the first glance and just playing with it a little bit. This is a much different gimbal in terms of they've redesigned the way it looks and feels and some of the functionality. So the key thing you notice, and this is, you'll notice it right off the back, is that this is now slanted. So instead of having this motor right in the back of your screen, it's now a little bit lower so you can actually see your screen, which makes a huge difference when your screen is like this big. Beyond that, one of the big things I noticed is just the weight and the feeling of it. It's a little bit thicker and it just has a more robust feel, so it feels like it can take a little bit more of a beating. Other than that, some of the key things is there's some new buttons on here, as well as you can now change the balance of this guy so that you can accommodate other cameras. So not only can you use GoPros and cameras about that size, but you can use the Sony little RX0, and it comes with a little like tray thing that you can set it on. So it's a pretty cool little gimbal. All right, so before we get into the footage, let me go through all the features that you're gonna find on this gimbal and kind of everything about it. So when you see the gimbal, you see that it's got a specific mount for the GoPro. It's also, they have other mounts for other cameras as well. On the handle itself, you have a few buttons. So on the front, you have your joystick, which basically allows you to point the camera up, down, left, right, any direction. You have your mode button, which will switch it to the various modes. So locked mode, follow mode, just follow panning mode. You could do selfie mode, and that's also the button where you turn on and turn off the gimbal. You also have underneath that is your record button, and this, once you link to your camera, allows you to just hit this button and you could start and stop your record. On one side, you have a thread mount, so you can attach some other items to this. You could put a microphone here, or you can attach a mount here that allows you to hook this to other things, say like a car mount. On the bottom, you have another thread, so you could add like tripods, or you could just put another piece of gear on the bottom. On the other side of the gimbal, you have your USB port. This is how you charge it. And you also have another button, and this button allows you to change the camera settings. So if you press it once, it changes between the camera settings in the GoPro. If you hold it, it allows you to go into a menu that allows you to change the actual recording settings. So resolution, format, all that good stuff. There's options to be able to change that just on the grip itself. Okay, and then on the front, you have a trigger. The trigger will lock the gimbal when you're in any of the follow settings. And then you also have a left and right trigger, which basically fixes the tilts of the camera. So if the gimbal leveling is off, it allows you to make a quick adjustment to get it back to level. Also on the top, you have a micro USB port, which allows you to charge your camera while the gimbal is on. So it comes with cables that allow you to keep the camera plugged in so your camera never dies unless the gimbal dies. And one more thing about this gimbal is you now have an app that allows you to do a lot of different things within the app itself. So once you're connected, you can change your camera settings. You can also change all your follow settings. You can use your joystick and move the gimbal around in the different directions when it's sitting on, say, a tripod or something like that. You can also go into your settings, and when you go down to your auto rotation, this is where you can set the fourth function on this gimbal, which is your time-lapse feature or just moving shot features. So you can set up a movement that's a minute that pans from left to right, up to down, or you can do a time lapse over a series of hours. And you set this all in the app here. So you have this added benefit because you're able to have an app. You can go in and set your settings, and it gives you the ability to do some really cool stuff with time lapses and just moving cameras. Also in the app, you have a lot of different settings that you can adjust, and then you can also go in and update your firmware. So there's a lot of benefits to having an app with this kind of gimbal. Okay, but the key with any gimbal is, does it work? Does it keep your footage stable? Does the software work? You know, all these things are the most important things. You can have all the buttons, but buttons are just buttons. Okay, so I've been playing with this gimbal for the last few weeks. I was in New York. I took it with me to New York. I was playing around with it here in Santa Monica before and after. And so the footage that you're gonna see is just kind of a culmination of a bunch of different days that I've been playing with this gimbal. All right, so now I have switched over to the GoPro on the gimbal. It is on the G6 right now, and I'm just wandering around, just trying to figure out how to get the whole app to work with the gimbal and all that. It's been one of the things that's probably been the biggest frustration with this gimbal, is getting the app to function, because the app will work and then all of a sudden the GoPro won't be connected, and then the GoPro will be connected but the app won't work, and then you'll try to update something on the GoPro itself and then it just won't update. You know, it's been a lot of issues with that portion of this new gimbal. Every time I try to play with the app, that's the biggest fail point, and I think it's hard to get something to connect unless it's really well done. So I have the camera turned, you hit the button 3 times, you get selfie mode, just like this. Hit 3 times again and it doesn't do anything. That's one other thing that I've noticed with this gimbal, is that everything works except for when I want the camera to turn back around. So when you're vlogging, you hit the button 3 times, it turns, it looks at you, you get this shot. But if you want to turn it back around, you actually physically have to like move the gimbal. And then I can just hit 3 times. It turns right back around to me. Okay, so my thoughts on this gimbal after playing with it. One of the things that really bothers me about these kind of gimbals that are coming out now is the apps and the software that goes with it. So a lot of times with gimbals like this, the apps don't necessarily work that well. They're good to have, you can do some cool things within the app. But unless the connection is solid and it's easy to set up, I'm not gonna use it. I mean, it's one of those things, if it's easy to use, you're gonna use it. When I'm out shooting and I have this thing next to me, if it's taking me 15 minutes to set up the app to this, I won't ever use it. And that's one of the things I found with the G6. You might be able to connect the camera to the gimbal or the phone to the gimbal, but getting everything to sync up and work all the time is kind of frustrating. It doesn't always work. There's a lot of times where it just wouldn't connect and I don't know why. You have to shut off everything, turn it all back on, and then all of a sudden it works. In terms of using the software daily and using the app daily, it's not something that I'm gonna use. However, having that app allows you to do things like the time-lapse feature and change the settings for your time-lapse feature. So that's a big addition to this one that I really like, is that now I can set up a shot and do either a timed period or a time-lapse period and get a different shot that you couldn't normally get with this size of gimbal. So that's a huge bonus. However, you just need to give yourself a little more time. So if there's issues with the app to figure out your settings, you could take the time and turn things off if it's not connecting properly. But beyond the app and beyond the connection issues that I've been having, this is a really solid gimbal. And with the addition of the screen on the back, which shows you battery, your mode, and all that, it makes it a much different experience than, say, like the G5, when you have to click it and everything's done off just lights flashing. Having a screen is a huge upgrade, and just being able to see right away that I'm in lock mode or I'm in, follow all direction mode, like it's a quick reference, so I'm not sitting there clicking through menus and it's just a button. So that's one thing I really like about this gimbal. Obviously, being able to screen is probably one of the biggest pluses of this. You can now see the screen and it's easier to use. It's a very simple thing, and I don't understand why more gimbal companies aren't putting this into their gimbals, because so many of our cameras nowadays have a screen on the back. Even like with the GH5, you could swivel out the screen, but when I'm on a gimbal, a GH5, the screen's put on the back. So this would be ideal in every gimbal. So in terms of the buttons and the ability to connect your gimbal to your camera, that's something that does work to a degree. So after you connect it, it seems to work and it seems to connect all the time. And you obviously have your record button here, which is great because it records and it stops recording. And because it connects so easily without having to do anything, I use this one all the time. The one on the side, however, when you hold it, it's supposed to give you a menu so you can change your camera settings. I've been having some weird issues where every time I try to go in and change my camera settings, using the buttons, it just doesn't ever save. In terms of connecting to the stick, the record button works. This button works on the side when you're switching between video, photo, and time-lapse mode. But when it comes to actually changing camera settings, I've been having a lot of issues trying to make it work. So if you're gonna be connecting your camera to the stick, you really have only the ability to record, stop recording, and then change between the modes, which is not that big a deal because your settings are right here on the screen and you can just change them there. It's also much quicker to change on the screen than trying to deal with the menu on here. In terms of usability, the other thing that really bothers me is having the tilt on the front here. So when you're holding it and you accidentally hit that, your camera's gonna start spinning one way or the other. I just think it's kind of a ridiculous button to have on the front here because there's no reason to even use that. It's only if your camera's off kilter. So it should be somewhere like maybe up here where you might use it once in a while to do a quick adjustment, not where your finger's on the trigger to stop it, because sometimes you hit and it goes. So that was another design flaw in my book. However, as a whole, I think this gimbal is solid. Even though there are some issues with the app, some issues with the connectivity, a few of the buttons in weird spots, as a gimbal for a GoPro or other small cameras, this has been my favorite to work with so far. It's smaller than say the GoPro Karma. It has more options, more features. You can put more cameras on it, and it works as a basic handheld gimbal with a few extra features that make it a little bit easier to shoot. At the end of the day, the main thing that matters, is it a piece of gear that you're gonna use? And this is definitely a piece of gear that I would have in my bag and I would pull out and use because I know I could turn it on, I could get into the follow mode that I need, and I can get stable footage. And then on top of that, if there's a few little tweaks here and there, I know I have the freedom to be able to do some extra stuff with this gimbal. And you just gotta learn the quirks of it so that you know if you're doing a time-lapse shot, for example, you give yourself a little more time to use this piece of gear to do that. All right, guys, so I'd love to know your thoughts on the G6. Is this a gimbal that you would be interested in? Let me know in the comments down below. And if there's any other gimbals that you have worked with that are, this size and work with this size of camera, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how they compare to this one. Okay guys, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I've got a ton of awesome camera tutorials. I got some reviews on this channel. I also do a lot of adventure and travel vlogs. So my wife and I were traveling to Vietnam in June for my 30th, just going all out and shooting and exploring and just having an adventure. There's also some other things on the horizon that are coming. I've got some bigger projects in the works. There's some podcasts coming out that I've just was on. I was just doing another video with Royal Caribbean, and one of the big things that's going on right now is that National Geographic is publishing me for my experience when I was down in Mexico climbing Orizaba. So lots of big things coming on this channel. Some other things happening just around all the adventures that I'm doing. So guys, stay tuned because there is a lot coming up. Also, come find me on Instagram at Jeven Dovey, and guys, I will see you on the next one.